Hi, today we're going to talk about a common modulation in jazz standards of down a whole step and give you some guidance on how to improvise over that. I'm Dr. Rob McWilliams and I teach here at the Jazz Music Institute, where we believe everyone can learn and play jazz. So one of the common modulations in jazz standards is when the progression moves down a whole step. So ability to hear that modulation and then be able to navigate through it will really help your improvisation. So as we know, modulations are defined by a dominant to tonic progression. So when we hear, that defines the key. So we're looking for a root progression now that moves down in whole steps. And that's what we call by down a major second. So the way that's typically done in a jazz standard is we'll get to the home tonic of a key. So it will be, if I establish the key of C, for example, and then I turn that tonic chord into a minor chord, and then to its dominant and resolve, I've now moved down a whole step. So that's how it's typically done in most standards. We'll hear that tonic major chord be turned into a minor chord, then go to the dominant chord that relates to that 2 chord, and then we end up in a key a whole step lower. Sometimes in a minor key, when we get to that minor tonic chord, we'll hear that turned into a minor 7 flat 5 in order to get to our next minor key. So for that one, I would sound like this. We turn that to a half diminished, dominant, to our next minor key, a tone lower, and then half diminished, dominant, resolving another whole step lower, a tonic. So let's look at some examples of songs where this particular modulation is used. One of the most well-known examples, perhaps the most obvious, one of the more obvious examples, is on How High the Moon, because the tune starts in the key of G, and then you'll hear the tonic major chord turned into a minor chord, going to its related dominant, and then resolving into the key a whole step lower. Then it does that again. So let's have a listen to how that works on How High the Moon. Now we go minor chord, it's dominant. Now we're in F major, whole step lower. Then we turn that to minor, it's dominant, then another whole step lower. So we've been in the key of G, we've moved into the key of F, a whole step lower, then to the key of E flat, another whole step down. Another tune that works in a similar way is tune up. So we establish the key of D major, then we turn that to a minor chord, go to its dominant, and now we're in C major, then we turn that to minor, its dominant, resolve to its tonic chord, so now we're in B flat. So the first 12 bars of that song went D major, C major, B flat major, in that order, all whole steps down. Another one that uses this particular modulation as a key part of its harmonic progression is a tune called Afternoon in Paris. And we start in C major, you'll hear the progression move into B flat major and then modulate it down into A flat major. Now we're in B flat, now we're in A flat, etc. So once again, we've gone C major, down a whole step, B flat major, down another whole step, A flat major. A common place for this particular modulation to occur in some songs is in the bridge. So a really classic example of that is in the tune Cherokee, which starts on the 2 chord rather than the 1 chord, but it goes 2-5-1 in a key. Then we turn that 1 chord into a minor chord and go 2-5-1, resulting a whole step lower. Then again into another key, a whole step lower. So let's have a listen to how that works. So we're in key of B now. Then we go B minor, E7, A major. Then we go A minor, D7, G. Then we go G minor, C7, and then it turns back to the original key by turning that one into minor, dominant, and we end up back in the original key B flat. But that particular bridge went through B major, A major, and G major, all whole steps down. Another tune that does this in the bridge is Joy Spring, which starts in the key of G with a tonic chord, then goes G minor, C7, F, whole step lower, F minor, B flat 7, E flat, another whole step lower. So let's have a listen to how that works. F major, F minor, E flat major. So once again we've gone G major, F major, E flat. Another tune that uses this idea and also uses the sequential melody, so it's basically the same melody transposed as the chords modulate, is in the bridge of The Night Has 1,000 Eyes. So now in B flat major, then we go B flat minor, E flat 7, and we're in A flat major, so we've moved down once again a whole step. And a tune that also does this downstep modulation in the bridge is Invitation, but in this case it's minor keys. So we have each time the tonic minor becomes the minor 2 chord of the next key a whole step lower. So it's all in minor keys. B minor, then we keep on B minor as a 2 chord, go to its 5, now we're in A minor, then keep that, go to its dominant, then we're in G minor. So once again we've gone whole step, B minor, A minor, G minor. Another tune that does it, some tunes do it in shorter examples. One of those would be in the middle section of One Note Samba, where we start with an E flat minor 7 chord, going to its dominant A flat 7, resolving to D flat major. Then we turn that into D flat minor, resolve to G flat 7 into C flat major. And once again, this is using a sequential melody, so it's basically the same melody transposed for the modulation. Go to D flat minor, G flat 7, B major. So the same idea, just move down a whole step. Now some tunes use this in a part of the tune. A good example of that would be the second half of a tune called Recorder Me. So I'll just play it from the part that applies to the modulation. So we're going to set up into a B flat major chord, then you'll hear it turn to B flat minor, E flat 7, A flat major, whole step lower, then A flat minor, D flat 7, G flat major, whole step lower. So here's how that sounds. Then B flat minor, A flat major, A flat minor, G flat major. So once again, 3 whole steps apart. And then let's just talk about a couple of tunes that use this modulation in the bridge, but modulating to a minor chord, then turning it into a minor chord flat 5, as I said earlier. So 2 really good examples of this. One of them is A Night in Tunisia in the bridge, which does a 2-5-1 into a minor key, and then it turns that minor chord into a minor chord with a flat 5, go to the dominant and resolve then to the key a whole step lower. So here's how that one sounds. So we're in G minor, now we go flat 5, dominant, resolve. And then it turns around back to its original key. Very similar progression, similar idea in the bridge of Alone Together, which sounds like this. So we resolve to G minor, then we turn that to half diminished, dominant, and then turn around once again back to the tonic minor for the song. So all of those are using that basic idea of taking, when we arrive at a tonic, turning that into now a chord that's in the next key coming, the 2 chord, going to the 5 chord, and then resolving. So in terms of how we improvise over that, the key difference between when it's a tonic chord as a major chord, for example, and when it becomes the minor chord, 2 notes change. So in C, if we're in the key of C major, there's our tonic major chord. 2 notes are different when that becomes a 2 chord, and that's the 3rd and the 7th of the chord. So they get lowered from those 2 notes to. So that's how we hear the change of tonality. So if we start in the key of C major, here's our tonic 1 chord, then we turn that to minor by lowering those 2 notes. Then we set up the next dominant, resolve, and now we're down a whole step. So those 2 notes are really key to outlining that in your when you're improvising over this particular modulation. One of the things I would really encourage you to practice is to go through this particular idea of the root progression going down in whole steps by playing third to the seventh of each chord, because we know the seventh, when a progression is cyclic, the seventh of one chord resolves very smoothly to the third of the next chord. So for example, I'll start in the key of C, and I'll just play the third to the seventh of each chord. I'm going to go 2, 5, 1 in the key of C. So 3, 7, 3, 7, 3. Now I'm going to turn that into the lowered third of the 2 chord. 3, 7, 3, 7, 3. Now I'm a whole step lower in B flat major, and I can keep doing that. Now I'm in A flat major. Then, now I'm in G flat major. Now I'm in E major. Now I'm in D major. Now if I continue like that, I'm actually going to repeat the same 6 keys, because the tonic keys in that particular progression have gone C, B flat, A flat, G flat, E, D, whole steps. If I keep going, I'll just start again where I was, C, etc. So a common way to deal with that is when we get to the point where we would just repeat ourselves, we move the key down a half step instead of a whole step. So if I do the 3rd, 7th exercise on that, you'll hear what that sounds like. So 3, 7, 3, 7, 3. 3, 7, 3, 7, 3. 3, 7, 3, 7, 3. Now I'm back to where I would be repeating myself, so now I go up a half step in order to modulate the 2 chord into the next key a half step lower. So it sounds like that. My jump octaves here. So now I've gone through all 12 keys, because the second set of keys will be D flat, B, A, G, F, and E flat. So there's 2 lots of 6, because if we go down in whole steps, obviously we only get 6, and then we start to repeat ourselves. So that's an excellent exercise to work on 3rds to 7ths of each chord, to get your ear really hearing how this modulation works. Another good way to practice this would be to go 3, 5, the notes 3, 5, 7 on the chord, and then resolve that. So for example, if I'm in the start in the key of C again, and then down the scale, then lower that to the lowered third. Now I'm in B flat major, whole step lower. Now I'm in A flat major, whole step lower. G flat major, etc., a whole step lower. So there's lots of ways you can find to play the arpeggios or the scales and just relate them into each of the keys as they move down a whole step. The goal of all of that being to get your ear to get really sensitive to that particular modulation. So when you're learning tunes or trying to work out what a progression of a tune is, you'll start to identify that by the way it sounds. And then also when you're improvising on it, you can start to use some of these ideas. So hopefully that's been helpful on one of the very common modulations in the jazz standards. So I'll take it out with one of the tunes I used as an example of that, which was the Afternoon in Paris, which does this very thing as part of its song.